I hope you are able to hear me. Yeah, now you can see me as well, right?
Yes,
Perfect.
perfect.
That's perfect.
Perfect.
That really works.
Okay.
Perfect.
So, Joy, you have one more minute to go, and the admin is going to, start the live stream also. So once that is done and they confirm, you can start the session.
Perfect. Uh,
Admin, do you want to start the live stream? Just let us know when once it's done. Has it been done? Okay. Joy, over to you.
A very good morning to you all and welcome to the IIGF panel discussion. It's a webinar on something that's of great import to a lot of us. It's all about digital governance and technological standards for responsible gaming. As we know, gaming is an industry which is really sweeping the nation in terms of its size, in terms of, we'll get to that when we talk about it in detail for a while, but really it's a behemoth which is also a huge vehicle of growth for the India that we envisage and the India that we dream about. However, there are lots of pitfalls and challenges in the way trying to understand the sector. And so what we've chosen to do today is not just talk about growth, but talk about how can we actually keep this industry safe? How can we formulate rules which in an industry where things change not just by the hour, but almost no, by the year, but literally by the month, forget about decades. So today, our panel discussion will focus on digital governance and technological standards for responsible gaming. And I think what we have managed to do today is get together a panel that really represents some of the finest minds in India who are working on this problem and looking at it. And I'll start with ma'am, Dr. Aruna Sharma. She's, of course, you'll know her as former Secretary of Ministry of Steel, Secretary, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, where she's worked on many landmark legislations, Additional Chief Secretary, Madhya Pradesh, and she earned her PhD in economics from Delhi University. Absolutely, totally understanding the field and understanding how the developments have happened. It's wonderful to have you here today, ma'am.
Thank you. Same here.
I move on to Ramesh Kailasam, Chief Executive Officer of India Tech, Governance, Reform, Policy, 20 odd years experience in just government relations and understanding how it works, business advocacy, crisis management, and a lot of work on technology projects. And in this last 20, 22 years where India's really taken off, he's been at the helm of trying to understand and trying to guide industries into where people work. And I think it's really important for people who, one of his great skills is his ability to easily traverse between government and private sector, understand both their needs, understand both compulsions that they work with, and to be able to marry them together to make the sector work. And of course, after that, we have somebody who's been a digital pioneer in India, really. Arvind is a co-founder of the Digital India Foundation, a think tank. He's an adjunct professor at ITBHU, Global FinTech Top 100 list of influencers. I mean, I can go on for the next 15 minutes talking about the kind of things Arvind has done, and it still won't be enough. So thank you so much for allowing us to take your time on this session. Thank you so much, gentlemen. So I'll go straight off and I'm going to start off with the questions. And I think what we need to do, it's really important for all of us, is to first really understand the size of the space and what we are dealing with in India. So I'm going to just quickly go around the table and I'll start with you, ma'am. What is the online gaming industry in India today? What does it look like? What are the categories? What are the business models? Very broad. And after that, Ramesh and Arvind, I just want your takes on the same thing as well. But I'll start with ma'am Aruna, please.
Right. Without any regulation, organically, it is today valued at literally 2.2 billion US dollars kind of industry, growing at the rate of 57% CHGR is expected in coming 10 years. Now, that is something it's going to be huge by another 8 or 10 years, it will be a 20 billion US dollars industry working around. And you have also mentioned about the categories. See, categories I can divide it broadly into one is the casual games, which I always say that gaming can also be edtech, where you learn skills of color distinction, simple games for children, repetitive games or board games, these kind of a things. But then there are serious money games also involved, where there is fantasy sports. You have, the card games and different kinds of games. And now a new category is coming up very strongly as esports. And definitely they have the revenue models where it is coming through advertisements. The advertisements is where in the non-money games, it's a step to gain some more tools to find it out, and maybe pay for playing the game. So this is the scenario in which it is growing, and we don't have a clarity of regulation on date, with few of the judgments of the courts, and a continuous debate whether it is a skill or gamble.
Yeah, sorry, please go on. I think there's
Should
a
I? Ah,
please.
because I was looking at your time
No. There's not a
span, how
time at
much you
all. There's
want.
not a
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
There's some sort of a problem with this system. No worries. Please go ahead, please.
Okay. Right. So if you look at the e-gaming industry, we have a potential to become a world leader. It's an opportunity. But it is equally important that a widespread like Hydra organically without any regulation is a point of worry, because there are some social impacts, there are some worrisome impacts, and definitely the government cannot be a moral policeman into it. But some regulation for the players' protection has to be inbuilt. So, under this kind of a scenario, this is how the gaming industry is working. And if now, I think there are 8 sectors which needs a clarity when you are going ahead with it. One, as I mentioned, whether it's a game of chance or skill. Second, from this will emerge of what kind of a direct and indirect tax it will invite. So if we settle the first question, the second emerges from there. Then, of course, the third comes where the INB ministry wants to match it with the OTT platform, like a broadcasting. But it is not. Here, it is more because the outcome is not controlled. Outcome is not predetermined. It depends on the knowledge, skill of the players. So that is also needs to be settled. Then it is equally important. Very loosely you use the words entertainment, amusement, recreation. Now, being an ex-bureaucrat, and I'm very sure my co-panelists will agree, the moment you say entertainment, amusement, INB ministry's forte opens up. They say, okay, OTT platform rules will apply to you. So I strongly feel, the book English should not be loosely used by the gaming industry. They must come up with their correct kind of vocabulary which represent them and also does not create this kind of a confusion. There is another very important issue that which we battled it out during the e-commerce thing. Gaming is just a platform. The developers which are developing the game, so if we decide on that, whether they are a platform or they are a product, that will again decide your taxation regime, that will decide the legalities and regulations. So that needs to be addressed. And then, of course, the social side of it, when people say people become addictive, the time, whether filters are to be left under 18 to the parental guidance and above 18 to the players themselves, or how it should go about it, that is a very, very important thing. But like I said before, I strongly feel that gaming can be used, can be put in the slot where it is honing of skills, where it enables people to play the games and also sort of acquire the skills, acquire the knowledge, and outcome depends on the player's knowledge. The more the knowledge, the more the skill, more chances of winning the game. So definitely under these kind of broad scenario, if we are able to battle out and all the gaming, those 400 players which are operating or the developers which are operating in India today, if they come up with some agreement, that is going to go a long way, because that will help the government. And I'm quite happy that government has made that interministerial task force, and I'm doubly happy that on the driver's seat is MeitY. It is not Ministry of Home or INB, and that issue has been settled now. So with MeitY at the driver's seat and settling these 7, 8 points, I think that will bring in a clarity and more understanding and opportunity for this gaming industry to cross what is anticipated or projected of $20 billion of US industry. I
Perfect.
think,
Thank you
yeah.
so much, Aruna, because that gives us a perspective of the amount of money. In fact, I have my claim to fame of being a part of this industry is because 22 years ago I had started a game called Super Selector, which was the first ever fantasy sport in India while a part of ESPN Star Sports. And we had just looked at exactly that. The start of the game, it started from a place where we said, can we make sure that people who are watching cricket are even more interested in cricket? Can we make them players in the game instead of just being spectators? And I think at the core of fantasy sport is that, and of course we'll talk a lot more about it. But I'll come to Ramesh first. Ramesh, she spoke about you've been seeing this industry for the last 20, 22 years and how it's going. What are the contours of the industry as you understand it today? What are the broad situation? Where is the industry today, in your opinion?
Thanks, Joy. And adding on to what Aruna ma'am just said, I would like to add a dimension to it, basically for understanding the industry, because this is something I come across when I meet folks in the government, meet folks in the state government. The fundamental question that comes in is their own version of truth of what they perceive as online gaming. And that is partly driven by what they've seen as adverts, and so on. And in terms of the startup ecosystem that I work closely across sectors, I'm finding this vertical, I would call it a vertical in itself, because the online gaming space has truly come alive in the past few years, especially with multiple gaming platforms coming and having an immense growth potential. Some of them even trying to bring to life traditional Indian games that have been forgotten and so on in the online avatars and so on. However, the sector has also attracted great deal of scrutiny from various states because, as I said, it's vital for governments to understand what the online gaming world entails, what it looks like, what is the potential, what is the benefit that India can gain. Can we create the next 3 or 4 big names or 5 big names or how many ever that can evolve from India and take on the world? I mean, we often hear brands which have evolved from different parts of the world and we are consumers to it. But have we created some brands that have come out of it? And this space, being a sunrise sector, it's something which connects people more closely, has a huge potential. I mean, I was looking at the global statistics. I mean, the potential is that the online gaming space will touch something like $300 billion by 2026. So are we, as India, putting a hook onto it and being part of that growth story? I mean, currently it's split between US and China at 25% each, and then you have APAC and China, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and India picking up. But one thing that I would say is drastically picking up is the mobile gaming space, which is dominating the show. I mean, that's surging at 50% market share, already 80 billion in revenues, and close to 3 billion people playing. I mean, because mobile gives you, democratizes access to screens which otherwise can be pricey in the other gaming formats. And of course, if you look at India per se, I mean, primarily India is a mobile first gaming market. 86% is mobile. And then you have the leading investors actually showing faith and investing. I mean, you have big names like Sequoia, Matrix, Kalari, TCV, Falcon Edge, SteadView Capital, all of them investing. So there is a comfort factor. There is a belief that Indian startups can grow out of this space. But broadly, in terms of the categories, I would like to see, and this is something, as I say, I put across, broadly, we can divide this online gaming space into multiple categories. The first category I would say is fantasy, which is nothing but games which, and as you mentioned, your own example of Super Selector, fantasy starts from there. Each of us have had our own brush with fantasy in the offline avatars as well and in the online avatars, where we keep saying that ideally I would have picked this team, and that goes by a series of knowledge, research, ability to forecast and take a variety of factors. Even Niti Aayog issued draft guidelines in this sector. And then, of course, these are games which are played when the real world actually plays them. So therefore, you have fantasy on one side. Then you've got esports, which are nothing but video gaming formats. These are tournaments which are for competitions and then virtual version of cricket, football, shooting, and so on. And you have esports also as a medal event in the Asian Games, Olympics, and so on. And then you've got a large category, as Aruna ma'am just mentioned, which I call as the online skill-based casual games and sports. Now, this is a combination of games which are both derivatives of real-world games, real-world games which are recognized by federations, real-world games which are not recognized by federations, real-world games which are just played and do not exist, but these are all regional games. And then you've got virtual games which don't exist in real world. So and online skill-based casual games and sports also have a category of fun element, entertainment element, and as rightly mentioned, depends on how you call yourself. You might have the same online gaming sector with different avatars having different parents, because the baby is owned by somebody else saying, oh, you look like this, so you are mine. And therefore, I mean, you can even have quizzes, all of that in the online skill-based games. In the virtual world, you can have things like Temple Run, Candy Crush, and the games like those. So basically, even these fun and casual games can become skill games if they make the necessary tweaks to make them skill predominant. And then you've got the entire genre of card-based games, which includes everything right from those, from a call break, game of spades to a rummy, and so on. And then I would put all other games which have not managed to categorize in these categories in any other authorized games of skill, which can be online, which can be a combination, because as I said, innovation is the key. We are seeing 1,000+ startups in India already in this space. So you will have all of those. And in terms of one last category I'll put is games of chance, because these are again games, but are predominantly chance driven. And therefore, either it is chance or luck which dominates the outcome. And in terms of business models, as you mentioned, we have pay-to-play formats, we have freemium formats where the advertising-based one, you watch an advertisement and you continue to play, you get some coins, you continue to play. These are called the freemium models. Then you've got the subscription-based models. It's typical to like playing a match where I say, if I have to play a cricket match today, somewhere people say, okay, put $200 or $500. That's because that is the match fee for playing. So you have similar match fee models in the online version as well. And then these days I've seen another model evolve, which are used by e-com operators, including even banks, for increasing somebody's stay in their platform. So for example, if you have bought a lot of e-com products or shop for products and they want you to spend more time in the platform, they are including gaming formats in that. There are banks which are looking at now, can they knock off a liability of their balance sheet by getting rid of a lot of points which have accumulated in your credit card by making you spend time and play games, by knocking off those coins which can reduce their liabilities. So, I mean, different kind of innovations have evolved, and I'll stop at that. I mean, broadly, that I would say is the lay of the land.
Perfect. Ramesh, you've done a fantastic job of it, because you've not only spoken about the kind of platforms and the games that ma'am was talking about, you've also spoken about some of the revenue models involved, because it's important for us when you're looking at it as an industry to understand it is a source of revenue, both for the players in the business and the government as a source of taxation and everything. Arvind, you've been, as I said, you've been one of the pioneers of the internet revolution in India, and how government can use it well, how government uses the internet as a tool for empowering people. I think that has been your significant contribution. What is your understanding of this online gaming sector in the last 2 decades that you have seen it?
So thank you, Joy, and thanks to Aruna ji and Ramesh for laying the the ground and what we are going to talk about. I won't repeat a lot of things they've said, because they've defined this industry and the whole landscape of the industry. But let me add a few things, which is even at a slightly more macro level, is that while, as you said, 25% games come from China, 25 come from the US, and that has been the characteristic of the internet globally. But suddenly you have a third power emerging, which is, and I say this with all humility, is that the model that always came from the US was a profit-driven model. Means private players making a lot of money, and generally the internet has not had a lot of governance. Technology has not had a lot of governance, and that's been the US model, that data for profit, or just a pure platform for profit model. Whereas the Chinese model has been platform for surveillance, and we should be very clear about saying that. The India model has been how it can really aid development. I mean, you have to see Arunaji mentioning that it can be edtech. This is the thinking that we have in India, for example, how we can make technology an empowerment technology. And when that comes, whether we are 1% of the global online gaming world today, in the future, I can be sure that India will contribute much above the 1%, maybe 10 to 20% of any industry in the internet world, because we are the biggest free democratic internet user base in the world today. 850 million people using a smartphone, as Ramesh said, mobile first. I think that's the greatest opportunity that is there in India. So when it is sunrise sector, and I'm glad that we are discussing today that there needs to be more governance, because this is the governance forum. And that is the model that India presents. The model that India presents, the world looks at it today with all seriousness, because there is a trust in both the governance process that India is developing on technology platforms, including gaming. And there is a need that because of the difference in models, right? The Chinese models and the American models, that the world says that, if India is doing it, it's democratic, it's empowering people and balancing between innovation and privacy and security and social concerns. And that is exactly what we're debating here. That, while anything that is going to was happening, whether you were doing it 20 years ago, Joy, or we were doing in some other format that is happening in the offline world, is today going to come in the online world, today or tomorrow, whether it's a Web 3.0 in the future, it's all going to happen. When it's going to happen, do you want to make sure that regulation and innovation work together? Yes, we want to make sure of that, so that it becomes, regulation doesn't become the innovation killer, but becomes a enabler of the ecosystem. And the one very, very important thing I think that we have to understand is that disruptions will happen. And when disruptions happen, especially when offline becomes online, you have this conflict always in any sector, where it takes time for all governments in a democratic and large country like India to come together and understand what is getting disrupted and how it is going to get, how it's going to eventually enable the sector that we wanted to enable. So given the definitions that we have, and you can see the vastness of definition, I'm going to add one more definition, and one more piece to this is on the online gaming is, while we have this casual gaming, money gaming, the e-gaming, you see there is a lot of sports which in the offline world were very dangerous. Motorsports, for example, it required a lot of technology, but it still was a F1 sporting or any kind of sporting. Today, with the advent of robotics and AI, you can actually simulate the whole game and actually do, those 12 cars racing on a virtual track, and still do and build on top of it a fantasy sport, and bet and or and build your teams and do whatever other things you can do, and but make the underlying games very, very safe. Also, so there'll be new formats that will come up, Joy, as we go along. What we are seeing today is probably just the tip of the iceberg. But what do we need? We do need enabling regulation, and we do need the right governance, so that all these sectors, the government is protected, society is protected at large, the developers or the startups, the innovators are protected, and then we set the right model for the world, that this is something that India is doing. So, and we can, of course, over the course of the panel, debate that. But the perspective I wanted to bring in was that India's approach to this will be key to the world to enable the sunrise sector to become well thought out globally. And I think India has the place, given its G20 presidency also, to advocate these principles, not only in India, but globally, and the world is watching.
Fantastic, because exactly that's the statement that I wanted to start off with when you finished, the world is watching. Because I think there are 2-3 factors that all of you have mentioned, which are very important. First and foremost, there's a lot of wheat and there's a lot of chaff. So by chaff, I mean betting, international players trying to come into India, trying to say, we are also gaming, we are also a part of this, but that revenue is going abroad. A lot of that revenue is illegal. A lot of it is being advertised illegally. So there's a lot of, and what they are trying to say is that, okay, we are also part of this online gaming sector. So one of the reasons that we've come out here today as a forum to discuss this is to say, how do we actually create a framework which protects what are responsible players whose income, if they make income, is also coming into the national economy, and save it from the 20 other or 30 other players who are sitting offshore trying to get money, trying to make what we call pseudo betting sites, trying to encourage gambling. How do we actually separate that? And I think one of the big things that we're going to talk about is, you see, regulations originally were made and you write a law and it would stay relevant for 30, 40 years. And how do you now create regulations for an industry where the technology is changing every 3, 4 years? Therefore, the way to look at it is very different. B is, I think, one big issue out here is, and what the government has understood, and I think we are also trying to grappling with, is that the experts of these in this sector are sitting, a lot of them are sitting in the private sector. They're 20 years old, they're 25 years old, they're the brightest kids in the world. And therefore, to be even able to take decisions about what is regulatable, how it can be regulated, there has to be a very, very strong consultative process, perhaps beyond any other industry. And that is the part that we need to look at, saying that how do we build a self-regulation platform which is nimble enough to deal with technology changing on a regular basis. So I'm going to take you to the next point, which is, now where there have been legislations that have been happening, and this is the one topic I want to talk about very early, because you see, one problem is that technology does not stop across state borders or actually across national borders, if you think about it. So we've had legislations on online gaming in recent times, and these legislations have been successively struck down. What are the implications of such legislations? How do we deal with it? And how do we make sure that they aren't a series of small cases? Because otherwise it's just breaking up into a series of small cases. They're being struck down, but overall, does the industry benefit from a situation like that? I think you're on mute, ma'am. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Joy, you have really brought it out very, very clearly on this particular issue. You have to understand that if you treat it as a game of chance, then it falls under the state regime. And all the high courts and different state governments taking different stands at different times, and different high courts striking it down. It requires every state to define it and every high court to define it. But what is being attempted now by this interministerial task force is to bring gaming as a center definition and center agreed parameters, and define it more as a game of skill. And this is where, my request to my two panelists and their fraternity is that all of you should come together. You mentioned about the SRO. I had been working quite a lot in the microfinance sector, and you have seen the way MFIN started literally dictating or assisting the RBIs, the way this entire sector is to be defined, it is to be operated, peer group weeding out those who are not abiding by the agreed principles. So something similar will have to be done here, where SRO has to take the first step ahead, where all your 400 players, you may have small different umbrellas, but then come together and then work out the parameters, which first of all define the gaming as a skill and not as a game of chance. One box. And yes, there are some games where betting and everything, like Arvind was mentioning, are there. So you have to put it that, okay, these are the parameters where it clearly comes under game of skill, and this is how you abide by it, and therefore it will come under the central government. And you will have a common agreed thing, parameters into this. But the moment somebody, any game developer steps out into a game of chance, then of course the IPC and the state and the gambling log, everything will apply to it. So that agreed parameters where 80-90% is fitting into it has to be clearly defined it, so that the moment you define it as a game of skill, the state governments are out of the picture, completely out of the picture. And then you come to the central government, where an agreed definition can be there by the constant dialogue, what you said, with the change of technology. And paid, there is also a misnomer that paid games are a game of chance. No, the paid games are also a game of skill, and high courts have also defined it. So therefore, this clarity has to come up. What will step into that line of chance the moment you go there, and what does not come here? That is going to set the ball rolling and avoid all this confusion, multiple court cases, every state government coming with their ordinance of ban, and everything will disappear. And that understanding will come up when you're going into it. And what state governments can ban is only the moment they say that it is a game of chance. Otherwise, they have no jurisdiction on it at all. So, with this kind of a structure, this is going to be a major leap, which if I say so, the first step is the SROs have to come with an umbrella, work out the parameters as to what will fit any game into skill, and every developer has to tick those boxes and say, okay, I'm a game of skill and I get into it. The regulator is like a watchdog. First watchdog is SRO and second is regulator. Of course, now many of the SROs are doing your KYC norms and other things, which is good. The payment systems are transparent, which is also good. And the moment you say it is a game of skill, then 28% GST does not come at all. Right? It comes only for the game of chance. So, it's like a chain. Everything will start fitting into one another. So these are the initial steps that are very, very important. That it is high time everybody come together in an umbrella and it comes to the agreed principles. And the regulators will also be open to it if it comes through SRO. They may not agree to some of your definitions, which can be discussed, debated by regular thing. It can be tweaked accordingly, but 90 to 99%, because you all know where the shoe pinches, and if you come to the common platform, that makes the path much easier. And that's the way many of the SROs have proved their importance over a period of time. They have a peer weeding out. They have a peer group pressures. If somebody is not abiding by it, somebody is crossing the line. So it's like I always say, if the mother hits the child, it's okay. If the neighbor hit the child, it's bad, right? So we don't want regulators to come and hit the gaming industry. Depending on understanding, the best is the peer group, and that is going to go a long way if you're working upon it. So I think for this particular thing, I'll stop here.
Okay, it's fascinating because I think you've mentioned a lot of things out here. But there are two parts we'll break it down to. One is what we call the hygiene of running a responsible industry, which is KYC. The money does not go abroad. The people are known. We know everything about it, how the money goes there, how the money sits in their bank. So that, that's the hygiene part of it. And the second is the technology part of it, which is fascinating because, we have at the Fantasy Sport, in Federation of Indian Fantasy Sports have from MIT, from many very, very renowned institutions, evidence that this is how it's considered to be a game of skill. So Arvind, lots of this is around when the government looks at it, and today they've taken a very important first step, and I think Aruna has mentioned that okay, this is going to be driven and helmed by the Ministry of Information Technology, which I think is fantastic because then it defines the scope of the industry to a large extent. If you're saying it resides in the Ministry of Information Technology, it defines the scope that this is information technology is a leader. But how does the government now take this forward? Because as I said, they have great revenue opportunities in front of them. Okay, great employment opportunities in front of them, but also a minefield where various states are saying their legislations are there, they're being struck down. Various states are feeling the need to sort of legislate. How does the government now navigate this? Because it's a very important sector. It is a potential, or not potential, it is a golden goose for India. How does the government help nurture this sector without these issues? I'll come to you, Arvind, first.
Yeah, thank you, Joy. And I think the intent of the government has clearly been defined. That this is important. We need to set the parameters and the standards right on the while they're evolving, and by announcing this intergovernmental meeting, the panel, and then having the IT ministry leading it. So that is number one. Two, the government has set a very I think. A clear path also in the past, right? I mean, you see, we have this three-tier structure, whether it was for social media or it's been for the OTT platforms, the media and information and broadcasting ministry has these three-tiered governance structures. And I think everybody is talking about that. Number one is always your platforms or the products themselves to do it. Two is the SRO mechanism. And I'll want to talk about the SRO mechanism. And then only the government should come into play, because the challenging thing with this sector, and as a computer scientist, I can tell you one thing is, if you put me in a court of law, I can prove any game to be a game of skill vis-a-vis any game to be a game of chance.
I mean,
So
that's your genius. But anyway, we'll go on.
so that is no, but that is the a lawyer can also do that. And what I'm saying in today's world, that is going to be ever evolving. Same platform may offer two things, which will be one could be a skill, one could be a chance game, right? So now SROs will, in my opinion, play a very, very important role going forward in this. And the role has to be that we have a charter. We have this charter is approved by the competent authority in the government. You are registered SRO. And who are our members? That really responsibility shifts to that SRO to ensure that there is fairness, there is following that charter. And that charter clearly says that these are the members that we have, and these are the games that are approved in that charter. Because this needs, the government may take 6 months, 12 months to come out with new legislation or filling the gray areas, while the SROs can be much more nimble and have the expertise, as you said, from academic world, from the research world, from the legal fraternity, from regulatory framework. So that is the job the SROs need to do. So I think there is a big role the SROs need to play in enabling this sector and working with the government. So instead of 1,000 people or 400 startups, whatever the class may be, if you have 5-6 good SROs representing different classes or a union of classes, they are the ones who can frame with the government better rules and set up this model. And this is the model that I think everybody in the world also looks forward to that going forward, right? And I think that will clear a lot of things in this ever growing issue of who regulates it, chance, skill, states regulate it, center regulates it, taxation, and everything else. The last point I want to mention before I conclude is that, see, while there is opportunity in employment and there's opportunity in attracting a lot of investment in the sector, the governance model is very important. The last thing is that we have to be very, very clear that taxation is equally important. The government has taken a view always that, we shouldn't come up with definitions to evade taxation. That's the point I'm trying to make, that taxation, the sector also needs to understand that taxation in whatever form one may be and what is fair. I cannot comment on what is fair, but whatever is fair should also be incorporated into this, into their processes and systems, and transparency should be there. Because as I said, again, we can, a few twists and turns can be done to make it a game of skill or chance. But that's where I think the games, the startups themselves with the SROs should also define the right norms. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, before I come to Ramesh, because it's fascinating, you've said something, and I think everyone agrees with it. There has to be taxation, because if the government does not see benefit in it, the government can see benefit in it in two ways: employment and money coming into the industry, money coming into this government to support it. So taxation, I think everyone agrees that taxation is a necessity. The kind of, whenever money goes abroad, it's money lost to all of us. But within that, enough taxation that allows the industry to continue to flourish without killing the golden goose. I think that is the one important thing. And I think in a lot of cases, the challenges we are facing is that ministries necessarily don't look at the fact that there are two parts to any industry. You need to invigorate it also, and you need to tax it also. And that the combination between the two of how much you invigorate, how much you incentivize the sector versus how much you tax it is really depends. That could be the difference between the takeoff of an industry and an industry just limping along. So I think taxation is, everyone out here, Aruna included, would say that taxation is necessary for any industry, because it also legitimizes the industry. It says that, okay, I pay taxes for this, therefore it's important. But it also, it cannot be of a time that cripples the industry. Ramesh, Arvind has talked about a very interesting framework, and this is a framework where, again, he's talking about something where India is leading the world, in the sense that, what are you talking about? You're not talking about one draconian government putting laws. You're saying, here's a government who's putting together a framework, and then in front of them, literally, as there are SROs. The SROs are actually the front line, because the SROs are expected to come across and deal with problems which the government may later codify. But right in the beginning, because the industry changes in such a way, you can't do it. This is a fascinating framework, and it's even different even from OTT or broadcast, which have important self-regulatory aspects, but in our case, perhaps the technology is the most fast changing. Do you see, and you're an industry veteran, do you see industry in welcoming it? Do you see this partnership with government and industry working?
Well, it's a very critical element, and as has already been mentioned by Arvind and Aruna, uh, there are multiple reasons why the framework is essential. There are multiple reasons why you need clarity, because as any other industry, and this is something important to understand. I mean, in the traditional conventional world, you had manufacturing goods which have the BIS stamp, which has the ISI mark, and so on, and you also have products which don't have it. So any industry would have the recognized element and the unrecognized element. Any industry would have the trust factor and the non-trust factor. And this is no different. So the online world also today, I mean, the 1,000+ startups that have evolved, you have some who have high levels of degrees of self-regulated models. You have some which are saying, okay, we'll play along, be the fence sitter. And there are some who would say, when the regulation comes, we will see. So you now have a cocktail of marketplace which is representing three elements, and depending on who looks at what, will decide and say, hey, you are like this or like this. And therefore it becomes critical that are we addressing the concerns as industry for everybody, both in the government as well as the civil society and people out there who have genuine concerns. For example, when I talk to mental health NGOs, when I talk to civil society, and when I talk to parents, when I talk to students, children who are playing these games, or for that matter, even adult who are kind of engaging in the real money games, I think there are 4 or 5 factors that clearly come out, which the industry has to arguably very clearly demonstrate and put it out there. And those are basically to say that you have user empowerment controls, you have technical standards, you have transparency for fair play. Because more often, I mean, I do hear from even children who play the games which are not the real money games, but to say that, hey, I think there was a glitch. They kind of switched it around, or there was a glitch which was intentional. And to some extent, somebody would say it was not a fair play, whether you're playing against the machine or against somebody else. Then, of course, you have the need for KYC and age gating, because the contents are different. So what age should be exposed to what content? And you have the ESRB kind of processes available globally. But all we are saying is that content should also can be decided upon to say which age can have what content and so on. Then, of course, financial integrity is critical. Prevention of money laundering, user frauds, responsible advertising, legality, and more importantly, I think consumer protection, because that's an element after e-commerce. The next set of things that government keeps looking at is consumer protection on gaming, online gaming per se. And then, of course, the business is growing pretty fast, so therefore it is also important. But I'd also like to bring one aspect which has been a problem with other startup sectors, which continues to spill over in the online gaming space, are those organizations or entities which are operating outside the territorial waters of India. And therefore, since the internet is all pervasive and seamlessly passes through, currently nothing can stop them. For example, as you mentioned, overseas online betting and gambling, for example, are people who are outside the territorial waters of India. Now, as mentioned already, you have states which go after gambling, not the center. And how will a state catch hold of somebody who is outside the country itself? So the jurisdiction blurs there and completely evaporates. And therefore, it becomes critical that we also create mechanisms which are in a way taking care of. So unless we define clearly what is required and what needs to be there and how it has to be enabled, because there's a sunrise industry and an innovative industry, can we put mechanisms in place where there is self-regulation? Can we put mechanisms in place where bodies for self-regulation are recognized? Can we put mechanisms in place where the government then does the least work, but does the most strategically important work? And that is because 1,000+ startups, I was looking, the number of games are 20,000+. So if I create a panel in government and say, I'm going to look at these 20,000 as it case, I mean, similar to an OTT model. I mean, even my grandchildren can't be approving what was released yesterday, right? So therefore, it's humanly impossible. So the best way out is to create a set of guiding principles and say, here are the guiding principles, adhere to them. An SRO could be one who could adhere to those principles, and I will have a collar to catch, which could be the SRO concern. So I meaning in this case, the government could be saying that. So there are various models that can evolve and which are practically doable models. We have seen that in other sectors. And therefore, I think that is the way forward we should be going about. But from an industry standpoint, equally, it is important to lay down these basic hygiene and principles in place to ensure that the sector grows, but grows in a hygienically and a healthy manner.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ramesh. I think we have very little time, so I'm going to run through all our participants because I think all of you have mentioned the important thing, governance. Arvind has mentioned how we can actually create a framework where the SROs work as if in front of the government. Legislation follows SROs because they are anticipating problems which perhaps the government cannot, or nobody can anticipate the kind of technological new issues that will arise in the future. But it's a center state, not a center state, it's a private public partnership where responsibility is shared by the operators because they realize that if they relinquish responsibility and do not self-regulate, then the opportunities for the blurring and things like betting and from outside comes in. How to stop it? I think it's important. Aruna, I just want to finish by just asking all of you, very short, 2 minutes, your vision for what this. One by one, we'll go. Your vision for what this regulation, what is the ideal regulatory framework you're looking for?
Joy, Amrita here. Just a moment. There is a question from YouTube also, in case the panelists want to take it with their final
Okay.
round. It's
Okay,
young
we
students
take
in
question.
class 9 and 11 and 12 wish to take up gaming as profession. What is the future of gaming as profession? How much time will it take to make it as a quantifiable and trainable skill? Just in case you can take it, fine. Else we can always revert to them over YouTube later.
Would any of you like to take it? Yeah, okay, Arvind is there.
I think there are two aspects to this. If the young friend of ours who asked this question can hear us, is that number one is whether you want to be a innovator in that. What I understood was that this person is asking how can they take this up as a profession, not to make more games, to be a more innovator. I think this requires creative skills, combination of creative skills, combination of technology skills, and combination of social understanding the product, the market that you're addressing. So if you follow that, I think those three skills broadly, I think that's where you can make this as a profession of choice, set up your own startups and prosper in this. Like any other industry, if there are 1,000 startups, even if a few percentage will succeed, maybe 40, 50 will succeed. So be persistent and perseverant with this. As I said, India has 75,000 plus startups, but we want more and more to succeed. But the nature of startups are that few will succeed, few will fail. But as a career, if you decide to go into this career, you need this combination of 3-4 skills and understanding of real Bharat. The thing that you also have to understand, I'm sorry I'm using your forum to say this, is that out of the 850 million, 85 crore internet users in India, the growth in India will come from Bharat. So understand Bharat, understand who your target audience is, understand technology, the product, and be creative. So you'll be successful in that. Thank you.
Perfect, Arvind. Thank you so much. And yeah, I've dealt working now in fantasy sports. I'm just stunned at the talent, the kind of people who are working in the industry. It really is heartening. And yes, there is great opportunity. You have the right kind of mindset. This is a wonderful place to be. One last answer by all the panelists. What, in 30 seconds, what do you expect from a regulatory framework in this industry? I'll start with you, Aruna.
Yeah, I would just like to number it quickly. The first thing is you must define skill and chance, right? Which you are all shy about it. Use words very carefully and do it. That's very, very important because that will make the job of the regulator very easy. Number two is your SROs recognized or not recognized. The moment you have formed a formal group or informal group, try building up some discipline into it and some of the parameters which the members of your SRO start following. I think there are 4 or 5 SROs. They should also talk to each other And I strongly believe that to convince the regulator or the formulator of the policy, it's very important to echo it. You can't talk different languages. 5 SROs coming with 5 languages, it doesn't help. So that echoing is going to help. These parameters, when done, be ruthless about it to make them follow, and that is what is going to make a difference. The regulator will find its way of the cross-border seeming which is coming of the betting games, which are illegal, like it is done. It is difficult in technology world, like we keep on removing the internet sites and they keep on emerging in a different name. So it's a constant battle. But then the regulators will have a mechanism, a technological answer for it, so that we can stop these kind of illegal things. The moment SRO come, the licensing will come, right? So because the moment your members come and they start abiding by the parameters set by the SRO, the licensing will come. And that will set the thing very clearly from where will flow, what kind of a taxation this industry needs it, where you have to group it. And I am very sure it will settle between somewhere between 12 to 18% of taxation if you define it correctly. You have to be very careful of defining. And any one of you, like Mr. Ramesh and Mr. Arvind clearly mentioned, that sometimes the same developer crosses the line of making it game of chance. The moment they cross the line, they will have to follow the game of chance. That is the IPC rules of gambling. It's as clear as that. So if your particular angle of the game is stepping that, then you follow that additional line of compliance will emerge or it will be applicable to you. So first thing first is define, have your strong SROs, in cross-talk among the SROs, come with common agreeable points, echo those points so that the regulator is very clear in its mind that, okay, this is what the industry or as a stakeholder wants it. And then regulator can tweak upon it, can work upon it, can agree upon it, can disagree on some of the points which comes on the discussion tables.
Perfect. Quickly, 30 seconds each from you. Ramesh first and then Arvind.
Well, I would like to say that, and this is something I've written about it in my columns as well, there is need for a principle-based approach. The government should come out with principles which are transparent, fair, practical, and are able to distinguish games of skills and games of chance, because obviously somewhere real money gaming will hit that wall time and again with state governments as well. Absence of a framework currently gives scope for a lot of unscrupulous platforms to thrive. There are different models which are available today. There are different tests which are available, which companies are putting forth, startups are putting forth, which can be used as a benchmark for coming up with these principles. That could be whether a highly skilled simulator can.
Ramesh, I think you're frozen. Yep. Sorry, Ramesh is frozen. I think
Let me
Arvind.
just pick up from where he's at.
Oh, sorry, you're back.
You have
Ramesh.
plenty of such models available. I think that should be the principle-based approach government can look at.
Perfect. Arvind.
Three quick things adding on to government should look at a principles-based charter. SROs, the three-tiered structure, they should follow it. Stay away as much as possible from betting and be very responsible in advertising and disclosures. This is very, very important. And lastly, KYC and money laundering, anti-money laundering is something that the government takes very, very seriously. And I think if these are the broad things, if the industry follows, innovation will follow. And please not only just build for India, build for Bharat, and then build for the world. Thank you.
Joe, just one point I want to make here, that educating the players is also important. Today, nobody is doing that. You have to educate the players about the various filters that are possible and do it. Educate the parents through your write-ups and writings, because by and large, we are all getting into technological write-ups, or I write about what should be the regulation. Nobody is talking about educating them. So that is very, very important, that you have to educate the user, and there has to be a grievance retrieval mechanism in the SROs. You must have that. So each developer should have, the SRO should have, and then of course the government will be the last resort.
Okay, fantastic. Final things we need a framework, we need SROs. I think these two are very important, but the government is going to help this industry if the industry helps itself by behaving responsibly, by creating its own guidelines, its own vehicles. And it's not just for India, it's for, as Arvind has so succinctly put, for Bharat in the world. Fantastic place to end. Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you, Arvind. Thank you, Arina. It's been absolutely fascinating. It's been a wonderful discussion. I hope we have much to think about this in the future. Thank you.